Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in. We have a major update right now as far as Donald Trump's cabinet is concerned. Matt Gaetz has withdrawn from consideration as Attorney General. So Matt Gaetz is no longer under consideration as Attorney General. I'm going to show you the statement that he put out today. I had excellent meetings with senators yesterday. I appreciate their thoughtful feedback and the incredible support of so many. While the momentum was strong, it's clear that my confirmation was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance transition. There is no time to waste on a needlessly protracted Washington scuffle. Thus, I'll be withdrawing my name from consideration to serve as Attorney General. Trump's DOJ must be in place and ready on day one. I remain fully committed to see that Donald J. Trump is the most successful president in history. I will forever be honored that President Trump nominated me to lead the Department of Justice, and I'm certain he will save America. So that is a lot of words to say that he didn't have the support, that it was clear he wasn't going to get confirmed. And in fact, we know, based on all of the reporting that we've seen thus far, that it was going to be increasingly difficult for him to get the support of senators with this House Ethics Report looming over him. Some quick background on the House Ethics Report. The House Ethics Committee opted to continue its investigation into Matt Gaetz even after the DOJ opted not to indict him. Now, as far as the DOJ opting not to indict him, that doesn't necessarily mean that there was no evidence he did something wrong. The DOJ opts not to indict people all the time for one reason or another. If there's any witness who might be reticent to testify, if there's any evidence that has any chance of let's see, I want to put this. If there's any evidence that for whatever reason doesn't seem foolproof, the DOJ might opt not to prosecute that person. Doesn't, again, mean that they're innocent. It just means that they're not moving forward with the prosecution. And yet still, the House Ethics Committee continued its investigation. They decided not to release the report on Friday when they were supposed to make a decision one way or the other. And then yesterday, they opted not to release the report as well. I'm going to show you what happened when Manu Raju of CNN spoke with the House Ethics Committee Chairman, Michael Gaetz, about what happened in the House Ethics Committee meeting.
You heard from Trump or his team at all about this?
Not heard from President Trump or any member of his team.
There are two options, he said.
Well, no, what I said is I view a public release versus a conversation about transmittal to the Senate. I think those are separate conversations that the committee needs to discuss.
Is the report actually done at this point?
The report is not complete.
It's not.
That's correct.
And so how could you possibly release it if it's not done?
That is something that we will be talking about today, and that's another reason I have some reservations about releasing any unfinished work product.
How far would you say it is from its completion?
It has not gone through the review process.
Now, Democrats say that the report is essentially ready for release. So there's a disagreement between members on this panel. There's concerns about Democrats. The Republicans are trying to bury this report and prevent it from becoming public. But ultimately, in order to get this out of the committee, we'll see if they actually have a vote today. It's unclear if that will happen. If that happens, it would require one Republican to join with Democrats on this committee to release it to the public. As you heard from Michael Gaetz right there, he told me there are two options. There could be a public release, or they can transmit it to the Senate Judiciary Committee themselves. That is, those are among the issues they are debating in this critical meeting, as the Gaetz nomination very much hanging by a thread, and the uphill climb of sorts to get the votes to be confirmed because of the very issues this committee is investigating. Those allegations concerning a lot of Republican senators, some of whom want to see that report before they cast that critical confirmation vote early next year.
Okay, so that was Manu Raju explaining that the House Ethics Committee, quote, had reservations about releasing the report because apparently it was unfinished, and they didn't want to set this precedent, this bad precedent of releasing an unfinished report. That was the precedent that they were worried about. not the precedent of allowing an unvetted, potentially child sex trafficking nominee move forward to be the top law enforcement official in America. That precedent was fine, but the precedent of releasing an unfinished report, someone get me my smelling salts. So this is what they were worried about. It took but mere minutes for Susan Wild, who is the ranking Democrat on that same committee, to come forward and offer her take and push back on the misrepresentations that were put forward by the Republican chairman, Michael Gaetz. So here is Susan Wild. Again, for those who are just joining, Matt Gaetz is withdrawing his name from consideration to be Attorney General. Here is Susan Wild on the House Ethics Committee discussing what went on inside.
It was not my intention to make any comment. I walked out of this committee without making one and walked back to my office, but it has since come to my attention that, in fact, we had agreed that we were not going to discuss what had transpired at the meeting, but it has come to my attention that the chairman has since betrayed the process by disclosing our deliberations within moments after walking out of the committee. And he has implied that there was an agreement of the committee not to disclose the report. That is an untrue, to the extent that that suggests that the committee was in agreement or that we had a consensus on that, that is inaccurate. And I will say that a vote was taken. As many of you know, this committee is evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans, 5 Dems, 5 Republicans, which means that in order to affirmatively move something forward, somebody has to cross party lines and vote with the other side, which happens a lot, by the way, and we often vote unanimously. That did not happen in today's vote, and I do not want the American public or anyone else to think that Mr. Guest's characterization of what transpired today would be some sort of indication that the committee had unanimity or consensus on this issue, not to release the report. That would be an inaccurate portrayal, and nobody should take that from what they have heard so far. There was no consensus on this issue. We did agree that we would reconvene as a committee on December 5th to further consider this matter. And this statement that I have just made is on behalf of all of the Democratic members of the Ethics Committee.
So clearly what was happening here was that when Mike Johnson, for example, went to do Donald Trump's bidding and exert some pressure on Michael Guest, the Republican chairman of the House Ethics Committee, and then Guest came out and said that I appreciate Mike Johnson coming and speaking with me, but that will not have any impact on our decision to release the report. Cut to, of course it had an impact on their decision to release the report, because lo and behold, even this committee that continued investigating Matt Gaetz suddenly decides not to release its report. Here's the deal. With these reports, either Matt Gaetz has done nothing wrong, you release that, and that's what that report shows, or he has done something wrong, and then inherently, by virtue of not releasing the report, you're making yourselves complicit in this effort to cover up what Matt Gaetz has done. And so I think it became clear that while Michael Guest, for example, was able to fend off the media momentarily, having someone like Susan Wild come out and say, that's not what's happening, would put a lot of pressure on Michael Guest as chair of the Ethics Committee to release a report that would show wrongdoing to a degree that is probably insurmountable in terms of what they investigate in the Ethics Committee. Again, we're talking about child sex trafficking of a minor, potential, alleged sex trafficking of a minor. So maybe he was able to buy them a day, but clearly it became obvious that they wouldn't be able to hold off forever, that there would be too much pressure to release this report. And so Matt Gaetz was probably pushed into this idea that the only avenue here was for him to withdraw his name from consideration as Attorney General. And so that's where we ended up today. Now, in terms of what happens with Matt Gaetz, I know that he has resigned his seat. I want to be clear that he resigned his seat in this Congress, the 118th Congress. And he, of course, did that because he assumed that the Ethics Committee would no longer have jurisdiction over him as a non-member. There is precedent, I should note, that the Ethics Committee can still release reports about non-members. And I'm going to show you an example of that.
Citizens for Respect is precedent today, called the choice of you joining me for this conversation. Okay. You know, there is precedent for the House and Senate Ethics Committees to not only continue investigations, but also release findings after a member resigns in scandal. And I know you've talked about this. There's Representative Eric Massa, where the committee kept investigating him for sexually inappropriate behavior after he resigned from Congress. And the Senate Ethics Committee also publicly released its report into Senator John Ensign days after his resignation, and that was even forwarded to the DOJ. So while we keep talking about this Gaetz report possibly being leaked, could it just be released under the right amount of pressure? What do you think?
So again, there is precedent for the Ethics Committee releasing reports into people who are no longer in Congress, and I think that's what we are seeing right now. So at this point, again, as I was saying, Matt Gaetz is no longer in the 118th Congress. Does that mean that he's also resigned his seat in the 119th Congress? I'm not sure, to be honest, because they haven't been seated yet. So I'm not sure if he's withdrawing in advance or if he's refusing to take his seat at all. But the 119th Congress hasn't started yet. That's not going to start until I believe they get sworn in on January 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll come back to you with more information on what happens with regard to that. It looks like I've been frozen here. So I'll quickly wrap up now that I've been frozen in probably the most unfortunate position here. But it is clear. Let's see if we can get this going a different way. Nope. It looks like I am stuck in this really unfortunate position. Okay. Well, in any case, we'll leave the update there. I'll do another video update on YouTube. Let's go here. I'll do another video update on YouTube, but unfortunately, this is the position that I'm frozen in right now. So as much as I would enjoy having you stare at this wallpaper for the rest of the time, what we're going to do now is I'll go ahead and end this stream. But again, for those who are just tuning in right now, Matt Gaetz withdraws his name from consideration as Attorney General. That is a good news. That is good update here, and we'll circle back as soon as we have more information on this front. So with that said, we'll leave it there. This is the most unfortunate wallpaper I could have asked for, but that's where we stand right now. So, okay. That's it for now. We will leave it there. Thank you all for watching. Tune in to my YouTube channel for regular coverage of this, because I'll be doing a regular video on this topic, and I'll catch everybody later on for another live stream, most likely. All right. Thanks, everybody.